platform to spread disinformation while trying to obscure the Russian origins of the journal so that readers may be more likely to trust the sourcing, meaning narrative laundering. That's what's called, narrative laundering. So get your material to be spoken by Americans that other Americans trust, someone who can deliver it better. And you can tell by how it describes their strategy. They also understood that those conspiracy theorists are going to be the same one to buy Russian disinformation. So you get to make society toxic by promoting conspiracy theories. And when people believe in those conspiracy theories, there's just a Zionist conspiracy behind everything, you get hopeless. You don't believe in the American dream anymore. You become anti-government, anti-establishment, anti-everything. It helps foster this idea that you should be almost like a rebel or a dissident, because you can only implement a conspiracy if you have immense power. So if you're spreading conspiracy theories around about everything, you're just drilling that theme. Bad guys have immense power over you. What are you going to do about it? Eventually, you got to fight back. And it doesn't matter whether conspiracy theory is believed by that person. It's just repetition. It's just they understood the value of just getting that thinking in Western society. And they understood that same type of thinking would lead people to buy Russian propaganda. And they're right about that. So that's the second plank. The first is the Tsar's Christianity. The second one is attacking civil society through conspiracy theories that then open the door for disinformation. And the objective is what some people call discourse collapse. To make it impossible for discourse to happen really at all if you can. Make it so people hate each other. Make it so that, and this has been extensively written about, make it so that people become apathetic, that they just go, I can't tell what's right and what's wrong. There's so much propaganda, AI, that I never know what's right and wrong, so I'm just either not going to pay attention, and from the Russian perspective, that means you're neutralized, you're a non-factor, or I'm just going to resort to my tribal impulses. I'm sure that my team is right, and I'm just going to stick in my echo chamber, and because that's all I can handle, whether the person admits that to themselves or not. Let's see, Alex says, got YouTube to work. Okay, and throws up on X. So, yeah, discourse collapse is basically, that's what happens before everything goes to hell in a handbasket. Because you can't, if you can't have discourse that's healthy and constructive, then it just turns into fighting and bitterness over time. If you look at George Washington's farewell address, which I recommend everyone read at least once or twice a year, you'll see he forecasted a lot of this. It's almost as if the Russians read that and said, thank you, George Washington, for telling us your weak points and how to exploit them. Now that leads to, like I said, the ripping apart of America. You make America kill America. And so there's Alex's, maybe you can pull it up. There's a quote from Alexander Dugin. You search Dugin in there. This guy is kind of like the point man for influencing MAGA and conservatives and Christians, which is amazing to me because I first learned about him. I remember talking about him in like 2002, and I was like reading his material. I think it was translated by someone else. I was reading excerpts. I was like, this is crap. I know that the military in Russia is studying it like he's this great philosopher, but it's not smart. He's not compelling. As an individual, he's not a good messenger. And I figured that he would rise up mentors because this doofus couldn't do it himself. And then here we are, and Alexander Dugin is now friendly with, being promoted by people like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, Alex Jones. You see them right there. So that's a meme I made. And that's just the quote. I don't know if the audience can see it. By the way, Candace Owens, she downplays the influence of Dugin on her. She was, I haven't even met him. In fact, I'm only considering meeting him because of all the Zionist lore. This is a tell with her. Whenever there's something that she's proactively seeking to do or planning, and it gives her an anxiety, there's something about it that she sees as risky, she always makes it sound as if it's a random, unplanned thing triggered by her opponents. Like you'll see this time and time again. I don't even know if she knows she does it sometimes. But this quote, this is like the killer quote that everyone has to know because it's kind of the key to everything. So Alexander Dugin, again, being promoted by these people. Candace owns two of his books. It's hard to get through a chapter. What's she doing with 2 books? So that means when I'm about to read, she knows. And definitely from the criticism she gets, because she responds to it. This quote, she knows, and she doesn't stand against him, she stands with him. So this quote is from his 1997 book, Foundation of Geopolitics. He says that Russia must weaken, demoralize, deceive, and ultimately defeat the enemy as much as possible, referring to the West. It is especially important to bring geopolitical turmoil into the U.S. domestic reality by encouraging all kinds of separatism, various ethnic, social, and racial conflicts, and actively supporting all dissident movements of extremist, racist, and sectarian groups that destabilize internal political processes in the U.S. At the same time, it makes sense to support isolationist tendencies in U.S. politics. The theses of those, often right-wing Republicans, circles that believe that the U.S. should confine itself to its domestic problems. This state of affairs is highly advantageous to Russia. So that's the plan to beat us in terms of foreign policy, geopolitics, and ultimately to destroy us, to make America, rip America apart. So anyone who is promoting a guy like that, there's an issue there. And he's still obscure enough that merely knowing who he is weird for your average commentator. How'd you hear about him? Why are you interested in him? Why'd you read his material and then decide to take in more and then promote him? Some of these people that have friendships with him, like Tucker Carlson, I think has a friendly relationship. Alex Jones, definitely. What goes on there that makes this guy so compelling for you to want to maintain a relationship with him? So there's things that go on in that process that I don't know, but are definitely significant. Hopefully we'll know one day. So now let's apply it to Candace Owens and some of the things we're going to reveal. Now I want to set expectations, very, very clear, because I was getting some weird texts from people. I didn't find something like her engineering Charlie Kirk's death. Okay, I didn't find that. I didn't find her trying to pay Hamas to bomb Ben Shapiro's synagogue or anything like that. But I still found something that's extremely significant and then becomes much more significant when you notice the pattern and what it fits inside. And the way I was able to see this and saw it more and more is I took a whole bunch of texts that laid out the process for recruiting an unwitting asset for an influence operation, and then how to launch an influence operation and the different stages it takes, all the way to this highest level, what it finally ends up in. And I took what those features are and I combined them together and I wrote out what each phase looks like, what to detect in each one. And I compared it to the chronological data I have about Candace Owens and her associations, her life, her rhetoric. It was an unbelievable match. I mean, it really is. The tradecraft of how each phase is supposed to go. Back in 2018 was when Russia-linked influence operatives were openly trying to reach out to her and Turning Point USA, but they really zeroed in on her and somehow picked up on that flattery was the way to do it. So I talk about that in my article for Glenn Beck, and then I have a lot more of that. But that's why I call it cracking the Candace code, is because you kind of need to have that framework to put all of that together. But even with that, for those that don't know, I broke the story about her lying about her trip. She said, I'm going on a family vacation to Russia. And there was outrage. But I noticed the way she said it. They're just little tells. And it also was weird that there was another story there. And then myself and then two others, Guy Restitutor on X and Eyepatch Man, who work with me and just do incredible work, helped me find out within a day what the true purpose was. And that was to speak at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, which is organized by Putin's top advisors, Russian intelligence, and is basically a venue for recruiting Western collaborators, specifically on their panels. And the key objectives, according to investigative documents that were published, were to go after foreign influencers and have media partnerships with them. There's a lot of honeypot stuff that goes on there. It's just a dirty place. Jeffrey Epstein and his Russian assistant were involved in it. Like, it's ground zero for that type of stuff. And they decided that Candace Owens would be a good speaker there to speak on a panel for about 5 minutes about the big families and pro-family media and things like that. And she spoke on a panel. And like I said, the panels are recruitment pipelines, according to the documents that are out there and the other open source information. So she tried to cover it up. She lied about it. And then when she came back, she tried to say that basically she asked for an interview with Putin, and she does that every year. Again, she's trying to say no anomalies. This is just routine. Everything's always unplanned and routine when she talks about things. And so they wouldn't give her the interview with Putin, but they said, oh, you know what? If you just stay a little bit longer, there's a big coincidence. You're here when this big forum is going on. Maybe you can speak. And coincidentally, they were able to fit her in. And so she had this short vacation that was shorter than 1 week. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And just so happened to be able to expand it so that she could accommodate that and have a last minute booking at this event. So it's a lie and then lying about lying, basically. And I have a timeline that I put on X. Like it's clearly not true. We found out about it the day after she announced her so-called family vacation. And so there's just no way. And all the way back on May 4th. And this is key. May 4th, if any of you guys are making a timeline. That is when she responded to my Newsmax segment with David Harris Jr., where I laid out some of her connections to Russia. And I was saying, look, Russia and Iran amplify her. There's a reason. They're waging war on Turning Point and Erica Kirk. Because that's how you hurt America. And you hurt America by amplifying Candace Owens, is what I said. She fired back a little bit. RT responded by amplifying her, doing exactly what I said they do. RT, by the way, used to be known as Russia Today. That's like the state media propaganda channel. So they came to her defense. And on May 4th, when she was responding, she's like saying, Russia's this great Christian country. All these wonderful, nice things that she would never say about America. And she says, I will go to St. Petersburg. And later on, she makes a comment that, I always wanted to go to St. Petersburg. But then if you look at her history, you see that she only in recent years got interested in the Russian Orthodox Church. And she talks about how she wasn't into faith. So you can't reconcile those two things. But what's the point in saying that? I always want to go to St. Petersburg. Why is she doing that? Because she's trying to say there's no abnormality. It's not timed for anything. There's no objective. She's not being proactive. So it's a nothing burger. I've always wanted to go to St. Petersburg. It's not true. So that indicates that May 4th, she was probably already knew she was going to be booked at that event. But what happened a few days before that? This is going to set to what I'm getting to that you guys are waiting for. About 5 days before that was when Brian Hartpoles filed that lawsuit. The one so she was already getting sued by the Macrons, and they sued her from Delaware. And a lot of people say she's not going to win that one based on especially what happened to Alex Jones. But enough people also say it won't work. That one is, you'll hear arguments on both sides about. But the one with Charlie Kirk's security chief, where she basically implied misconduct in the context of the things that she talks about, that would make her fan base say, all right, well, you must have been involved. And she knows that. So he sued. And then next thing we know, like 5 days later, she's just, she's singing the praises of Russia like she had been doing, but it's especially passionate. I will go to St. Petersburg. I mean, and even according to her made up story, it's a last minute thing, right? So if we draw a connection between those two things, it's a last minute thing in reaction to that, I suspect. And I'll explain why. But even in her telling of the story, I was going to Russia anyway, just for a few days. And then, last minute I was added. So we can agree that was a last minute thing. And the question is it in relation to the fact that she just got a lawsuit that I'm sure her lawyers told her, hey, you might be in really big trouble. The reason I'm going through all this is because even though I broke the story about that event and how she was speaking there and how dirty it is, and she was on a panel with Russian state propagandists, and including one that was involved in kidnapping Ukrainian children. It's just a horrible event. It didn't make sense. The length of time didn't make sense. The purpose behind lying in that way, didn't make sense. She's a mother. She brought her kids to a war zone that the US government tells Americans absolutely do not go to. There was smoke that could be seen as you entered the building on the first day from a Ukrainian drone strike. So even though she gave these interviews about how she was amazed how safe it all was, no sign of conflict, it was all so orderly, there was a drone strike nearby. She still brought her kids in there. She didn't hightail it back to the United States. So that means something really important. And people have been upset by her conduct. They'll say, oh, well, it must be money. She already has plenty of money. And really, she still is a mother. I mean, it takes a lot of money for someone to put their kids anywhere near where explosions are going off. So I don't think it's money. All right, well, some type of backroom deal, like maybe she just liked, because she was the happiest I've ever seen her is when all those Russian reporters came around her and she posted a picture saying, oh, what a scene. And then the interview she was giving after, she was just beaming. She was just loving being a star. So was it that? Some people suspect so. I don't think so. She brought her kids. She's still a mother. There's only one thing I can think of that would almost make that trip make sense, to a way that even her fan base would say, all right, well, you know what? I kind of get it. What if the threat you face was that you would lose everything, including your ability to take care of your kids? Not have them taken away, but what if you had, you didn't know if you'd lose all your wealth, your home, and everything you worked for, everything you set aside for your kids? And then how would you get a job again? Because who's going to hire Candace Owens, right? Especially if she gets sued. So you won't be able to recover. You can probably see where I'm going with this. And so I'll cut to the chase now. So I disclosed that she was lying about her purpose in going to Russia. And we found out what we thought was the answer, but I still feel like it was inadequate. Well, we found out that there were some other meetings she had that she did not disclose. People who are Westerners and very pro-Russia and moved to Russia. And they're part of Russia's public face to the West. And this group of people who are all associated with each other were pretty much with her from beginning to end. She was hosted by one of them in Moscow. And then as she's traveling around, I guess they were like a tour guide. They were with her, including in St. Petersburg. And by the way, this is relevant. The St. Petersburg event, because Putin is there, is the single most secure spot in Russia at that time, and perhaps year-round, that someone can get access to. Literally. If I said I need to have an in-person secure meeting in Russia, what can I go to that's not like a private government building, a government office? It'd be this event. That's where you would go. So she goes to this group of people, this interesting group of people that are with her from beginning to end. They go to even to St. Petersburg, which, you know, has all sorts of there's data points there, like I just said, extremely secure, connected to Russian intelligence, all of that. We know that the panel she spoke on there was for recruiting Western collaborators. And what's particularly interesting about this group of people is that, as far as I can tell, there aren't really any public indications of prior contact. So it's not visiting an old friend or family member. No reason to go to Russia to meet them. Don't even know how she knows them. And they even have a YouTube channel that they interview people on, but she's hanging out with them, but she doesn't appear on their channel, and they don't appear on hers. So why is she meeting with this group of people? How do they know each other? Well, they're associated with a company that's linked to a specific part of the Russian government. So if there's no reason to spend time with them for anything else, the only answer can be the company. That's what they do. That's what they specialize in. That's what they offer. Then what does that company do? And I'll get down to details. But we'll speak more broadly right now. So could that company have something to do with her lying about that trip and then lying about the lying and taking this weird trip just to speak for a few minutes on a panel in a war zone, bring her family? Well, let's take a look at the company that those individuals are associated with. Let's look at one of the things that they do. Alex, you have the one screenshot there? Oh, well, you look at that. What do they specialize in? What do they do to make a living? They are the experts in bringing foreigners, but including Americans, especially Westerners, to Russia under a specific program to harbor sympathizers, particularly those who need to get out. You need to get out in a hurry. Can't take risks. This is the group that you go to, the OKA agency. And they assure on their website 100% guarantee of confidentiality. So that means you have to meet them in person. If you're using that service, there probably isn't going to be a lot of public communication beforehand, because you got to do this stuff in person. Now, it mentions that they're specifically focused on for citizens from countries included in Decree number 702 of the President of the Russian Federation on the provision of humanitarian support to individuals who share traditional Russian spiritual and moral values. All right? Think about that last part. Who share traditional Russian spiritual and moral values. That's what you need to have to qualify. So Candace Owens was friendly towards Russia before. She had talked about possibly becoming Russian Orthodox. What was her rhetoric before the trip and during the trip and all those state media interviews? All about how she shares traditional Russian spiritual and moral values and has abandoned the ones of the West. In other words, I qualify for your program, guys. And that's going on as she's being brought around by the guys, by the company, people associated with the company that does that. And it gets even more. Those associates, the people that are associated with that company, and I'll give specific names and all that, collaborate with someone on the governmental level for this program, which Putin in the top, like this is a major thing that they want. They want to bring especially Americans to Russia. It's like a big ideological victory, build a base. They've been talking about building an American Christian conservative community in Russia, which would basically be an ideological base. That's kind of fallen apart so far, but they're trying to get there. So this is a big deal. It's a big initiative, and you have to qualify for it. And so you have these private companies that are connected to the Russian government. Okay, so these individuals are associated with that. But who is the point person on the governmental side for this? It's a woman named Maria Butina. She was arrested in 2018 in the United States because she had infiltrated the conservative movement as a spy, as an influence agent, and an influence operator. And the U.S. eventually caught her. She pled guilty, and then eventually she ends up in Russia. And she needs a new job, so they set her up at RT. That seems to be kind of their plan in that situation. And then eventually she becomes a Russian official. Now she's actually tasked, based on her history and influencing the American conservative movement, to bring those same American conservatives over to Russia to move. Embrace the ideology, and then those that are really dedicated come to the holy country of Russia, which is how they describe themselves. So she's hanging out with a group that's associated with a company that basically acts on the values that she espouses to move Americans there, particularly when they're in need, because who knows, maybe a lawsuit is going to happen. Something else happens around the time of Candace's trip. I'm going to go through a bunch of data points and it'll all make sense in a bit. I saw dozens, and one of my colleagues said he thought it was hundreds. All these videos popped up on YouTube. All English language. all saying basically come to Russia and here's how it's comfortable. That was the message. Traditional values, ideological stuff, but it's comfortable. Yeah, all these companies are sanctioned. But look, we have copies. Like especially for guys, it was like, look at all the women that love me when we come here. But a lot of it was on logistics, like, oh, the trains. Let me show you how the trains are just like America. Let me show you how Starbucks and all of them are just like America. So when Candace was posting during her trip, those things, like she was saying, oh, look at how Russia just has their own version of Starbucks because they got sanctioned. And people were mocking her, saying like, oh, you're saying if Russia is better than America because they had to steal their branding and basically steal their IP. No, that's not what she was saying. She wouldn't say that. That's crazy. Even if you disagree and think some of what she said is silly, like that'd be a whole nother level because that makes no sense. Oh, I'm better than the ones I have to rip off. No. What she was doing was she was integrated into the specific theme of all those English language YouTube videos that suddenly popped up at the exact same time that were saying basically it's the same thing. If you look at one of the interviews she gave to the state media, she said, oh, I'm amazed that this is the same thing as America. She's posting pictures saying how, oh, there's so much for children to do here, as if that doesn't exist in America. So what she was doing was she was advertising moving to Russia. And also, I believe, this is my opinion, making it look as logical as she were to do so herself. Seeding. So it doesn't just happen one day and seem really bizarre. An anomaly, right? She never likes you to see an anomaly in her travel or what she's doing. She's always reactive, never proactive. So she's basically doing an advertisement for Americans to visit and move to Russia at the same time that these English language YouTube videos are popping up all over the place with the same exact message from different angles. But it's all about credit cards. She makes a post about credit cards. She was mocking somebody like, oh, you thought that because your American Express wouldn't work, that you'd have difficulty in Russia? No problem. Like she's systematically, I don't know if the tour was arranged, if the messaging was given to her or what there or how that went. But I will tell you the messaging aligned up, not with just the generic Russian messaging, but the specific messaging at that time with the objective of not just saying that Russia is this great Christian conservative place. And therefore, if you care about your traditional values, you almost are morally obligated to go there, right? You're serious about your faith, right? Oh, well, if you're serious, how come you're not going there? Look how great it is. But layered on top of that was, it's comfortable. It's not crazy to move here. Look, it won't be so bad. That's the subtle messaging there. So again, you have to put together these data points, and then you start seeing a much clearer picture. Now, let's talk about the people that she was associated with. We already talked about associated with Butina, the Russian spy that infiltrated the American conservative movement until she was arrested and kicked out. So it looks like she stayed with Joseph Schutzman. She talked about staying with a traditional Catholic family with 8 children. That matches him, except she said Iowa. He's Texan, so maybe someone different, similar family, or she was misdirecting. I don't know. He's the host of Russia Up Close. There was no interview. I mean, is that a little weird? Like, oh, I knew someone who was innocent. Like, oh, you have a YouTube channel. Thanks for hosting me. I'm not going to give you an interview. On June 1st, and this is another pattern you're going to see with pro-Russian, Russia-connected people that reach out to Candace, going all the way back to 2018. This guy says that Candace is divinely guided. He says, divine providence has blessed the trip of Candace Owens with this historical event of the reception of the statue of Our Lady Fatima by the president. Nobody but the Mother of God could have planned such a coincidence. That sounds like an oddball thing. When I collected the statements of what people who tried to get close to Candace do, going back from 2018 all the way up to this, it's all language like this. You're divine. I mean, she said she has superpowers. Her and Charlie had superpowers, right? I mean, you got to have quite the ego to say that. So someone that believes that about themselves, and there is video where she actually says, "This is not my platform." You know, the one that she like teaches people to dislike Jews on. She's like, this is not my platform. This is God's platform. I am his conduit. So the people that are using these lines, again, going from 2018, when she formed Lexit, to now, there's a reason for that commonality in that type of flattery, where it's over the top, like it's like a joke. Now, Joseph Schutzman, what he was reacting to, because I know that previous statement doesn't make sense. The bottom line is that he's saying only the mother of God could have planned for Candace Owens to be here during this moment. Now, what is that moment? It's called fleeing the West. That's how the post he's quoting describes it. And it's about a French family of 10 who fled to Russia for safety and traditional values. And Putin gave the mother the award of heroic mother. They were persecuted, the Russians say, in France for opposing the LGBT ideology. Now, they were persecuted for their faith by the LGBT advocates. And her husband gave Putin a Virgin Mary statue. By the way, Putin kissed the Quran that a jihadist gave him. So, you know, don't buy into this whole stuff about like him being an authentic representative of Christianity. But this individual gifted him a Virgin Mary statue and stated, millions of Catholics pray with Russia. Victory will be ours. Here's another post. Yeah, so this is directly to her. And again, what's this guy doing? The significance of this. He has a show. I forgot to mention that Butina, the government official, the spy, is on there all the time. So she's so that's like almost her platform. They're advertising Westerners and Americans to use this pathway to go to Russia. And he writes, my takeaway from Candace's visit to Mother Russia, this was one for the history books. Her visit has already touched countless lives in America and Russia, and I believe this is only the beginning. Candace and George are more than a loving couple committed to truth. They are an example of grace under pressure, courage under fire, and faith without compromise. They love Christ our King and his Holy Mother. They stand firm when others bend. They speak when others hide. The taboo is broken. The wall is down. The doors of friendship between peoples are opening, and no swamp politician can stop what comes next. Thank you, Candace Owens and George, for your courage and steadfastness. You lifted the veil in a way no one else could. Come on. Like, I'll tell you what, I have close friends. I have people I admire. 5 words of that would never come out of my mouth about another human being. And this is like a consistent thing over and over again. So what's going on? It's an influence operation. But specifically, this guy's involved in, again, this isn't a coincidence. It's not just aligning with Russia. It's not just the broad themes of Russia being a group. It's the specific messaging of Americans and Westerners needing to move to Russia, being obligated to do so. And she's probably being hosted by one of the main movers in that, who works with the government official, the spy, who infiltrated the American conservative movement and is now using that expertise to accomplish that objective. How many things have to line up? Come on. Here's another individual. That guy, Joseph Schutzman, he has a co-host. The co-host is known as Moscow Photographer, which, without directly making an accusation, I just point out it's such a common cover for this type of stuff. It's almost a joke. It's like when people in intelligence, like anyone that has a background in it will know what I'm talking about, or like they joke about, oh, I'm sure that guy, he's a reporter. He said, oh, no, he runs a travel agency, right? Oh, he's a photographer. Like, it's just one of those things. It's just a great excuse to go around with VIPs. It just works. And that guy's name is Eddie Gonzalez. I think he moved to Russia from Texas. I think that's right. And so he has the show with Joseph Schutzman. That's one that Butina constantly goes on. She's an influence operative. So put all that together. Candace's undisclosed meetings are with a company that handles all of that entire operation. and works with one of the foremost experts in infiltrating the American conservative movement. Here's another individual, Pietro Stramezzi. I know I'm like destroying these words. Pietro Stramezzi. He leads a group called Friends of Russia. He posted a picture with Candace on June 1st. And he says he's the one who hosted them, but I don't think he matched the profile of what she was describing. So, but hosted might have just meant like he had an event. Like he did have an event. I'm going to show you a video of it. So he heads, or at least recently headed the youth wing of an organization led by a guy named Lavarini. Lavarini is an associate of Dugin, involved with the Italians, like the Italians are on their side. And so the organization that he leads the youth wing of, that guy has ties to an interesting group called the Russian Imperial Movement. The Russian Imperial Movement, well, he's involved because, let me be specific, because I want to be clear. I'm not saying that the original Italian guy, Pietro Stramezzi, I'm not saying he's connected to the Russian Imperial Movement directly, but he led the youth wing of an organization led by a guy who is, like his boss was. And so who is Russian Imperial Movement? Well, they put together a coalition called the World National Conservative Movement Council. It was a network of European groups that were all pro-Russia. There was this big effort by the Russian Imperial Movement to try to unify European and North American like white supremacist groups, pro-Russia groups, fascist groups, all the radical ones. They're trying to form a common front. This was especially a thing around the time of the Charlottesville protest that was going on. So this guy, Pietro Stramezzi, posted a picture saying he hosted Candace Owens. Who is this guy? He leads the youth wing of an associate of the Russian Imperial Movement. So now that you know that, what is the Russian Imperial Movement? Why am I bringing that up? The Russian Imperial Movement was designated as a foreign terrorist organization under the first term of President Trump. In fact, it was a big deal because it was the first time that the U.S. had designated a foreign white supremacist group, especially one that's based out of Russia. It's connected to the Russian government. They trained terrorists that attacked Europe, but then did all this other subversive stuff. So let me be clear again. The person who says that he hosted Candace and posted a picture with her on the strip led the youth wing of an organization linked to the Russian Imperial Movement, a foreign terrorist organization. Some people will just say that's indirect and guilt by association. Other people will say it's a little bit too close for comfort. I'm going to let you decide. But I think that's a little bit of a headline, right? And that same individual who I just mentioned, the one who led the youth wing and is one that hosted her, what's he known for? Like if you look through the Russian internet, what's his name most commonly associated with? Well, Alexander Dugin is one of them. The shared values visa. You know how I keep going back to that policy. Relatively new policy that Russia said. So we're going to be the safe harbor for Westerners. This guy's associated with it. Another guy. So you have this guy on the third guy involved in organizing her trip and where she was going, the host that's involved in this. Specifically, like there's an article that's basically, they call him like a representative actually for it, particularly for Italians because the guy's Russian and Italian. In August 2024, it's describing him as basically being a face for the shared values residency pathway. And basically, you apply for this, you say, I'm being persecuted in the West because I'm a Christian or I'm a conservative. The big one is they're trying to transgender my kids, like against our will, or come take them. Like all this like wild stuff that Russia tries to make sound like it goes on in every school, every corner, as if that reality exists. So you're persecuted by the liberals, you're persecuted by the woke, the globalists, whatever term you want to use. And so you apply for this visa, and it's a 3-year visa, but then you can renew it, or you can go for citizenship or whatever. But the idea is to give you asylum, basically. And so this guy is involved in that as one of the faces. There's a video, Alex, that this guy posted. I don't know if you can see it there. And the list of files, well, this will give it away, but look for the name Steven Seagal. The martial artist, the actor, the has-been. All right. I believe that's the one that shows him. Oh, there he is. He gained a little bit. He got older. I'm not ragging on him. But he is a bastard, so I don't care that much. So he moved to Russia, probably maybe genuinely loved Putin, whatever. He became friends with Putin. Putin gives him this big award, grants him citizenship personally. Steven Seagal is like a big symbol of Americans moving to Russia because they have better opportunities in Russia and because America persecutes people. You know, and so what was his issue in America, though? Like not paying taxes. Financial. It was a financial necessity for him to go to Russia, and Russia was happy to give it to him. He screwed up a little bit because he still left some of his assets in the hands of one of his managers, and that manager and the entity was still in the United States. And so a judge was able to say, oh, well, we're going to take that little piece that you left behind. But there she is with, I'm sure that he will tell her, if you're looking to leave the United States, don't make the mistake I did. I mean, isn't that the perfect guy to have that conversation with? By the way, how come she didn't promote that she met him? Right? I mean, if you're with Steven Seagal, most people would like brag about that. It would fit her narrative. I don't know what that, I won't speculate why, but why did she not want her fan base to know that she was in the same room as Steven Seagal, who also spoke at the same event as her, by the way? Kind of interesting. Okay, I'm just going through. I want to see. I'm looking for. Okay, so here's a little bit about the shared values visa, because this is going to make some light bulbs go off. It's technically not a visa. It's a temporary residence permit, but you have to apply for it after entering Russia. So you might be thinking, well, if she's concerned about the lawsuits, like why don't she just hightail it out? Actually, if you follow the process, what does it look like? You go there for a short little bit because you have to, file for this, or maybe you don't even do that. You have to have your first person. Most likely, you would want to have your in-person meeting with the people that handle it, and then you know what documents to bring and that type of thing. That's how it would likely go. But if you want to speed it up, then you can do it on the first visit. But the point being, it's a short trip, right? I was saying it was weird. Who does a family vacation in Russia for less than a week? Right? All the way over there, all that huge expense. It doesn't really make sense. It makes sense if you need to hold preparatory meetings for this type of thing. I mean, that's the time space that's required. And then she says, as soon as she comes back, well, actually I think she said to the Russian state media, oh, I'd love to be here for years studying religion. Ceding that little pretext. But she says on X, oh, I'm going to come back to Moscow and I'm probably going to stay for a month. It's just an interesting, research the process and you'll see it's an interesting time frame. And then she also, after that, said, I'm trying to find the exact quote. It was just a few days ago. She went back to the theme. And it's an anomaly because no one's asking her about this. Like, no one asked Candace, but she puts out a statement saying, just because the paperwork is so annoying, I'm going to apply for a longer-term visa to Russia. But okay, what? Why? But why would she tell everybody that, right? If it's totally innocent, why does everybody need to know? No one was asking. No one in her audience cares about the permit process there. That she needs to go for this longer permit, which, by the way, how you get that permit? The shared visa for fleeing because you're being persecuted in the West. That's one way you get in there, because there's all these requirements to get the temporary visa, but you gotta learn the Russian language, Russian history, all this stuff that she doesn't qualify for. She qualifies for the shared values visa. So she's setting up I believe, the only thing that matches. She's setting up to be able to say, like, oh, it's just because of paperwork. Look, I told you all the way back then, the paperwork was a pain in the butt. So I needed to just get a longer residency permit so that we don't have to do it each time. And she says in the same statement, because we're going to go to Russia probably biannually. We're going to go twice a year, just like we do to the UK. See, it's every time she's addressing something that she's insecure about, where she doesn't want to look proactive about something or planning something. She always ties it back to either my critics are making me respond in this way. I didn't want to. It's happened randomly. It wasn't under my control, my decision. You did. Or it's normal course of business, guys. Going twice a year to Russia, same thing as going to the UK. When she first announced that she was going to Russia, what did she say about her husband? She had her calm. Watch the video. She is calm and she's talking about, I'm going to go to Russia, speaking confidently. And then she goes off script a little bit and you see her eyes dart back and forth. And she's trying to figure out, she feels like she has to say something more. And she's just like, oh, well, you know, my husband has been there a bunch of times. And because Europeans, they just go everywhere, you know, and that's the line she put out there. It was weird. Why did you mention that? Why'd you feel at that moment you needed to double down that answer and just like add a little bit more justification for this trip and assure people, oh, this is not abnormal. The reason it looks abnormal to you is because you're American. If you're a European, it would look normal. I mean, that's the subtlety there. That's the subtle message, right? Nothing to see here. And then she later says that he went there a lot, 1 or 2 times a year. It comes back to that same number. She goes, oh, George would go to Russia like once or twice a year for fishing. Well, she didn't say that the first time she mentioned. She just said, oh, Europeans do that type of thing. And then she clarifies later, oh, fishing. Because Europeans go to Russia for fishing. I mean, Russia's been a troublesome spot for a long time. That's an expensive, long trip to go fishing. And I'm not necessarily accusing him of doing something nefarious, but what I am saying is that there's a lot of weird coincidences, almost always accompanied by some assurance that it is not an anomaly. So, according to the process, first you have to enter Russia on your standard single entry private visa. So maybe she'll do this next time. She goes on the private visa, then you apply for the shared values visa if this is what you want to do. And that's the temporary residence permit. That's good for 3 years, but then you can renew it. But you've got to pick a category. Remember what I said before. There's still policies and procedures. You got to qualify. The eligible category that you can pick on this one would be because you need to go to Russia, but due to the individual, the applicant, their rejection of the policy implemented by these states that impose destructive, neoliberal ideological attitudes that contradict traditional Russian spiritual and moral values. And clause 4, governing that, says at some point you have to confirm it in writing, which is something you're going to want if you have to do that. You want to do that at the end, or you're going to do it in person. You don't want that. You don't want this being electronically transmitted through email if you want to go through with this. Now, I'm sure she believes a lot of what she's saying. But isn't that just another interesting data point? I mean, what has been her mantra lately? Like, there were standard pro-Russia lines at one point. Oh, the Russian Orthodox Church is good. I think Russia is a good guy in Ukraine. Some stuff that I think is crazy, but like, that's out there. People can pick that up in the normal echo chamber. And around 2022, it just goes hardcore. She basically starts saying she's an expert on Russia. It's a personality change when it comes to that. I don't know why. But especially lately, she's like diving in on saying and embodying the very things, adopting the very issues that this process requires you to adopt and believe in. After you apply, because you feel that your Western society, and it lists countries, America and the UK is one of them. So you feel that America is contradicting Russia's traditional spiritual and moral values. So you have to flee. Poor you. You have it so hard. After you apply, Russia performs standard security and document vetting. There's a process. You have to do medical exams, fingerprinting, a lot of stuff you have to do in person. But basically, up until you go through that process, even though they don't have as a step ideological screening, that is going on. I mean, you have to declare something. There's one website I read where they were warning people about this. I mean, they're advocating doing this, but they said, but just know the declarations you're going to have to make could cause you some trouble back home. In other words, you have to become a traitor. You have to swear loyalty to Russia, which she has. I'm tempted to say she's almost directly done it. If you look at some of the language, when she says that there's spiritually superior and she's a spiritual person, it's not a declaration of loyalty. She says Russia's better in every way. We should be like Russia. I mean, it's pretty close to loyalty. She talked about, in one tweet, she was saying, oh, I can't wait to dispel all the lies about Russia. Everything, literally everything you've heard negative about Russia is wrong. All of it. Like that's almost swearing loyalty. And I don't know that necessarily says you have to swear loyalty, but it's clear from the way it's being described by the companies and the websites that facilitate and promote people going through this, and by the letter of what's required, that you have to ideologically separate yourself from your home country and view Russia as better. And at some point, you're probably going to have to essentially be a traitor. Okay, so there's one website, Rushable. I was looking at the different sites that give guidance on this in English, because this is what Americans have to read. Applicants must declare disagreement with the country's policy. So this is the one that is saying, be aware if you do this, you're going to have, it could cause some trouble back home. It warns that your financial assets might be frozen because of sanctions, and, transactions going to and from Russia are kind of frowned upon. You'll be received negatively in the West. People won't like you because you're going to have to basically betray. It doesn't say that, but it says your declaration is going to cause problems for you back home. But the intention, it emphasizes this, the exact phrase, long-term commitment. The permit that you're applying for, it explains, is temporary. But the intention is eventual long-term residence in Russia. So, and it actually says, here's a quote. Now, why am I going over this? Because I want to dispel the idea that going for that longer-term permit is like not a big deal. She does this. Oh, it didn't. It has nothing to do with treason. It has nothing to do with setting up shop in Russia to get away from the consequences of my crazy podcasts and my crazy theories. No, it's just it's paperwork. It's annoying. That's her argument. But if you look at what the resources say about what this is, what the dangers are posed, and what you have to be doing, and what you have to intend to do, it's a thousand different story. And it says, this is a guy quote, not a quick fix. This is not meant as a short-term escape valve, but for those genuinely planning a long-term move to Russia. And this happens under, I want to go through more lines so you know what the criteria are and you can match it up with the stuff that she was saying, especially in Russia. Sorry. Because you're going to see it's not her normal word language, right? Her normal word usage. Like the way it's described, the key words, it's like the key words that someone picks up when they're trying to fit in. They're just learning a topic. They learn the hot words that sound like intellectual to get in the in group. It's just not her normal way of conversing. And you see her using those words and making those points. And then these are the words that show up in the criteria. She's auditioning. I'm tempted to say, and again, that's my opinion. When I'm saying auditioning, I want to separate what the facts are from my very confident assessment. She is basically verbally applying for that. So presidential decree number 702 came out on August 19th, 2024. All right, relatively recent. And that's the one that has, what it's about is on providing humanitarian support to persons sharing traditional Russian spiritual and moral values. So here's some quotes. That's its purpose. So you believe in these things if you want it. With the aim of protecting fundamental human rights and freedoms, yeah. Supporting those who freely choose a spiritual, cultural, and legal connection with the Russian Federation. It grants right to apply for a temporary residency permit, foreign citizens. Oh, their inability to stay in their countries due to rejection of destructive neoliberal policies that conflict with traditional Russian spiritual and moral values. Okay, so that I said before, that's kind of like, that's repeated throughout these sources. Point 13, traditional values are threatened by the activities of extremist and terrorist organizations. It means in Russia. And these extremists threaten individual media, mass communications, the actions of the United States of America. It's defining as a threat. So saying the purpose of this visa is because the actions of the United States of America and other unfriendly foreign states threaten Russia's traditional values. You have to choose one or the other. So that's part of the rationale for it officially. Let's see, look at 14. Section 14, ideological and psychological influence on citizens leads to the implantation of a system of ideas and values that is alien to the Russian people and destructive to Russian society, hereinafter referred to as destructive ideology, including the cultivation of selfishness, permissiveness, immorality, denial of the ideals of patriotism, service to the fatherland, the natural continuation of life, value, strong family, marriage, large families, creative work. These are all things it's saying these are threats coming from the West facing Russia. So it's saying this is what we have to defend ourselves against. This permit is a way of getting people who are on our side when it comes to these things. So you can't. So if you want to apply for this, you can't contradict Russia on any of them. Service to the fatherland, like you can never criticize that. Russia's positive contribution to world history and culture. The destruction of the traditional family through the promotion of non-traditional sexual relationships. So if you're pro-LGBT, you couldn't go through this. So if you're applying, you better double down on that. You've got to believe in Russia's positive contribution to world history and culture. I mean, that's kind of the weird thing that she's been hitting at, right? She's not a historian. Speaks very confident, though, about Russia's positive contribution to world history and culture. The formation of a society that neglects spiritual and moral values. That's another threat that Russia needs to combat. This is a good one. Distortion of historical truth, destruction of historical memory. All right, so you can't contradict Russia's narrative about history. They have true history. So that goes along with her saying everything you've ever heard about Russia is wrong. It's a lie. It's fake and gay, as she says. Denial of Russian identity, weakening of the all-Russian civic identity, the unity of the multinational people of Russia, undermining trust in state institutions, that's a threat. Reforms in the field of education and upbringing, culture, science, media, and mass communications should be carried out taking into account historical traditions and the experience accumulated by Russian society, subject to broad public discussions. Like these are all, like when she's praising everything about Russia, it's like she's checking all the boxes. Another part that's great. Formation in the international arena of the image of the Russian state as the custodian and defender of traditional, universal, spiritual, and moral values. You can't go against that. You have to endorse that. That's a pretty kind of extreme position, right? It sounds a little culty, a little bit like a cult, like you're doctrinated. Oh, happens to fall right into it. Yeah, you have to be a willing hostage of the yeah. They just don't call themselves communists. They call themselves Christians. So now, oh, I guess they're okay. Increasing the international prestige of the Russian Federation. All right, so it goes on and on. And now you might be saying, oh, the idea of Candace or somebody getting sued and then going there is weird. I'm going to show you why it's not weird. It actually happens. Like it happens, like this visa, 1,000 visas under this have gone to foreigners under this program. Most went to Germany, but 105 went to Americans. So what I'm saying is an option for her. And by the way, you just wait till I get to why I say it's the only option. 105 Americans are already taking it up, so it's not actually an uncommon thing. Oh, the OKA agency. That's the company I was referring to before that those guys are associated with. They promote it on their YouTube channel and all that. Part of their website says that they can help residency permit as well as temporary and speed up residency for specialized skills. Yeah, they can speed up the program for you. Oh, Rushable, one of the sites that's promoting this. This is going to get to the second part of what I think is happening. Really, really important. It says, many people, well, it says bridge account in a friendly country when you prepare to move to Russia. Many people first open accounts in Georgia, Armenia, Serbia, or Turkey, transfer there from the US or European Union, their assets, and then move on to Russia. And it goes on to warn that that permit can take 4 months. It takes a long time to have savings. And this is what you got to do. You got to move it to another country. So if you want to do this, you've got to involve another country where your money can be held safely. Now, if you want to move to Russia, it's hard to get money in and out. That's a problem no matter what. So there's probably, if Candace or anyone wants to do this, one of the tells is that they're also going to be traveling to another country where their money can be safe. Well, Candace, I think it was when she came back, or maybe she made the announcement, she said, we're doing another family vacation in a month. I bet people have something to say about that. She didn't name the country. Why? She's acknowledging people are going to criticize it. Why? Maybe because the light bulb is going to go off. You combine that with a short trip to Russia, then you go to this other one, you put them together, and that's the best process for this type of thing. So what could that be? I'm going to get to it. I think it's Dubai. I don't know if that's the next country she goes to, but Dubai would be the best option. All right, let's talk about precedent. I was talking about scripting and that this isn't weird, the theory I'm putting forth. If you want to figure out what someone's going to do or a government is going to do, the best thing to do is look for the closest, the example closest to it. With Candace, it would be Natasha Ray, the originator of the Brigitte Macron conspiracy theory that was promoted by Russia. The originator is very pro-Putin. Just like Candace, Natasha Ray got sued. She lost. What was the next step? She filed for asylum in Russia. She ended up not going there because it got overturned. So I guess she, wants to battle out in court later. But if Candace is looking at Alex Jones, she has to think that's likely me next. If she's looking at the originator of the Macron conspiracy theory that she adopted and expanded, and says, oh, they sued and they lost. Now the Macrons are suing me under the same basis in the United States through Delaware. That has to be on our mind constantly. And we know how Russia handles it, how they handle it with the originator. Offered asylum. There's actually, I don't know if you have it there, Alex. If you search Ray, R-A-Y, all right, don't worry about it. Oh, wait, yeah. Zoom in on the left part. Maybe I can read it. Look at the language she uses to go when she thinks she has to hightail to Russia because she's getting sued by the Macrons the same way Candace is getting sued. Oh, Russia is better than France for all these reasons. France persecutes free speech. Russia defends traditional and Christian values that are inherent to me. Russia's a victim of disinformation. Look, it's all the same script. So you would think that these are separate data points, right? But no, if you look at all of this as an influence operation, you put those data points together, this is a process. The person that she's most likely to copy is going to be the person whose life is most like hers, who's getting sued in the same way for the same thing. So she has to be aware that that's what that person had to do. They almost had to flee to Russia, and they had to say these things. And then it just so happens that she takes a hidden, secretive trip to Russia that she lies about to go to the most secure event possible. And she's with associates of a company that specializes in bringing Americans over there to move there. I mean, to do that exact thing. I mean, come on, add all this up. And again, but the Brian Hartpole lawsuit was April 30th. 5 days later, she's already setting the pretext. Hey, I got to go to St. Petersburg. Nothing to see here. Always just been interested. Now, she's also said that I guess she had some legal dispute with Daily Wire. So she's been saying that Ben Shapiro's threatening to bankrupt her. So that's really on her mind. She's talking about Brian Hartpole. She has the Macrons. She claims she has Ben Shapiro and Daily Wire after her. And then what about the big one? What if Erica Kirk and Turning Point go after her? To file a lawsuit. If that happens, she has to think long and hard about, I'm likely going to lose and have everything taken from me. And then she's going to think, well, I have this option. I prepared it. My audience will feel sympathetic to me for doing it. They feel I'm a victim. Who can blame her? She had to save the future of her kids. I mean, it's logical, right? You love your kids. You're going to, like, what other options does she have? So if she loses these lawsuits, she needs two things. First, she needs a country to go to that she's comfortable in that will not cooperate with the US and European courts. Most countries have agreements with the US. The laws related to offshore accounts have been improved. But that wouldn't even solve then your personal accounts, because you do have to have a bank. You have to have these things. You look at the list of places she can go. Not going to go to North Korea. She's not going to go to Iran. She can't go anywhere in Europe, basically, because the European Union agreements. Even countries that don't have full agreements have partial agreements. You can't gamble with that. She likes Russia, and it's the only option. Those things all line up. And it's the option that the closest, nearest example was almost exercised. And by the way, Russian oligarchs who know how to shift money in and out and this whole thing, I mean, they're all over that event she was at. I don't know if she met with them, but Oh, Laura Loomer pointed out, and I don't know if this means anything, but it's a data point, but I'm not incorporating this into my analysis. That recently on one of her LLCs, she changed the officers. And that she's also got a private trust that she puts assets in, which is a way of hiding it. It's not illegal. People do it. Rich people do it all the time because they don't want people to look at what they have, right? So it's in and of itself not a problem, but you mix it in with everything else. At the very least, it's good that Laura found it and put it out there. So it's a key data point. All right, so I said there's two things, right? Where she placed her family, the only safe option is Russia. In this circumstance, the only safe, semi-comfortable option is Russia. But what about the assets? Because you got to get money in and out. Probably don't want to trust the Russian government completely. I mean, they just come in and take something, right? That's where Dubai comes in. Perhaps the UAE is that second mysterious country that she needs to go to on a family vacation almost immediately after doing the Russia leg of her family vacations. Because she said, again, she acknowledged people are going to criticize it. She knows the light bulb's going to go off. Russian oligarchs, Dubai is their favorite place. The Iranian government used Dubai. Everybody uses Dubai. And for money laundering, hiding assets, and you can actually do it legally. Like without breaking American law. You can close your LLC in the US and set up a business entity in the UAE. That's legal. There's a lot you can do that's legal to set this up. But am I reaching? Like Russian oligarchs put their assets in Dubai, but like Candace Owens in Dubai, like a Muslim, like you might be thinking, Ryan, like Russia, she talks about, there's a connection. Now you're getting cocky, thinking you can figure out that second country. Well, Alex, try searching Dubai or UAE in that folder. Remember what I said about the tells? Just wait. It's going to be worth it. No, it's going to give it away. Different one. All right. There's a tweet. This is so interesting. August 2024. Would you say Candace Owens is like a big foreign policy buff? Like, would she care about relations between the UAE and France? You know, does she read newspapers about the relationship between the UAE and France? Is she passionate enough to post about the relationship between the UAE and France? I mean, probably not, right? She posts a link about how the UAE has completely frozen buying 80 jets from France because they're mad that Telegram's leader, who's Russia linked, by the way, got arrested there. Now, if you agree with UAE doing that, let's just say you're passionate. You might say, good job, UAE. Like, there's a million ways you can express agreement. What does she say? August 27, 2024. Wow, might be time to move to Dubai. That's a little bit of a tell, right? Like, who reads something like that and says, oh, might be time to move there. Why? Why? Oh, because they canceled a contract with France for jets. They arrested a guy with an encrypted messaging app, and I don't like that. Might be time to move there. No, it's on her mind for some reason. February 2025, a little bit of a tell. She responds to someone saying, talking about traveling in the Middle East. Where can Christian women go that's safe? She answers Jordan and UAE. Why is UAE on her mind with that? Why did she feel compelled to spend her time responding? Because she actually doesn't tweet a lot compared to other people. So it's telling when certain things say, oh, I need to address that. Yeah, there you go. See, it's an innocent comment that isn't interesting until you line up all these things. And that's why I had to do this long podcast. Now, here's the kicker. If she wants to shift her assets, she needs someone she can trust, right? I mean, that's kind of, you need someone you can really trust. Who can you trust to help you shift your assets? I mean, you need someone who's done that a lot, who's succeeded, who's willing to take that risk. I mean, what are the odds that she knows somebody? Well, look for the screenshot. I think you know what I'm talking about. There you go. Andrew and Tristan Tate happens to arrive in Russia, and specifically the part of Russia Candace's at, St. Petersburg, at the same time on her short little trip. There's no pictures indicating that they hung out, but the Tate brothers are longtime friends of George Farmer, going way back. Weirdly, they never explained why that friendship began, why it lasted so long, what it's based on. But we know they're friends. We know that Candace did a show interviewing Andrew Tate, defending his innocence, despite all his financial crimes, sexual crimes he's accused of. And I might have forgotten to give the video. One of the things that they're very open about is that they know how to hide assets. And where do they do it? Dubai. What's one of their main bases of operation? Dubai. When they landed in Moscow and they went to St. Petersburg, where did they come from? Dubai. So think of the models Candace looking around and saying, I need to follow. The other lady getting sued by the Macrons for the same thing. She lost. What'd they do? She prepared for political asylum in Russia and did these things to get there, to open up that option. You better believe she's thinking about doing the same thing. Friend Andrew Tate. He constantly moving around, has to hide assets. Look at what's he doing? He's hiding assets in Dubai and then going to Russia. He's very pro-Putin. In this case, he's like on a propaganda tour. So something new is happening there. So my theory is based on the precedent set by the people around her. And the fact that her behavioral patterns line right up and the logic lines right up. I spent a lot of time trying to figure out our options. I consistently came up with this option. This is the only option. It's Russia and Dubai. Andrew Tate says, Dubai is the best country in the world to buy property. Let's make sure I'm not forgetting anything. All right, so to summarize as we close out. I mentioned early on that I did that synthesis of the signs of an influence operation and the phases, what goes on. Little details, even if you're planning to defect to a country, you're supposed to travel there a lot, not do it in one shot. You want to make everything you do look like normal and routine, including going to the country that you eventually want to end up in. Like all these little things line up just remarkably. Like how these things go, like an influence operation that ultimately culminates in the top level, which is a defection and setting up operations in the country you go to. Like going back to 2018, you can see the evolution. Her behavior, the lies and everything matches the Russian process to take the visa to go there. So her behavior matches what she has to conclude is the only option if she loses a lawsuit. And it matches my theory about what those options are with Russia and Dubai. You line that up with Andrew Tate, who just happens to show up at that mysterious trip at the same time as her. They don't post pictures together. But if you're going to talk about assets and this type of thing, you got to do it in person. He just shows up. He's not a speaker at the event. He just shows up. Mathematically, like there's no chance that happens like that. You put all that together, I think. And by the way, I left a lot of other things out because I know I said it. There are other like Candace related things I was going to talk about. I'm saving it for later because I'm sick and everything. But these are the more, I mean, this is the thing that people were waiting for, right? So what were the new revelations? The big one is that she did not disclose who she was traveling around with, probably because it's a giveaway. It's the very people she needs to work with if she ever wants to hightail it out to avoid her assets being taken if she loses a lawsuit. And so that's a big find. It's all those people and all that activity. But then analytically, you add it up with Andrew Tate, with the only options available to her, the precedent by the people around her in similar situations, the behavioral patterns, what she's lying about, the specific things that she's saying. Like it all fits. And so what happens, right? So let's say she does that. It's not just about Candace. At that point, it'll be the biggest success in Russian propaganda history if this happens. They're recruiting American conservatives and Christians to go to Russia, or at least ally with Russia, but especially go there, based in the form of an ideological base for Tsarist Christianity to do a crusade to preach against pro-Western Christianity. Just the other day, I saw Candace said Judeo-Christian, whatever the hell that means. She sees a civil war within Christianity and Russia on the right side. So she's a person of faith, and like she has to go there, right? She has to work for them, according to her view. If you know who Tokyo Rose is during World War II, Japan had an American-speaking female speaker doing propaganda to mess with American troops. That was a big deal. This is bigger. I mean, setting up a base in Russia and bringing her audience, exposing them to not just her content, but the content on whatever network she's a part of or whatever infrastructure she's a part of. Having an American celebrity, someone who recently had the #1 podcast, do that is worth every penny, no matter how much it costs to Russia. I mean, this is one of the most golden opportunities in a long time they've had. So from a national security perspective, I'm hoping to stop it. What am I hoping happens? I'm hoping that a judge hears about this and says, based on the people she's meeting, which are facts, the things that she's saying, which are facts, that line up with the rhetorical process to qualify. I'm not saying it's insincere, but that tour did that. Oh, by the way, the media tour she did, very weirdly, disproportionately, emphasized the Macron angle. She's being sued by the Macrons. You know her about the Macron story. Now, Russia's influence operations are obsessed with Macron, but it's kind of an old story, right? Like of all the things to talk about, all the issues she talks about, why Macron? It's a script. They're introducing Candace into the network, but they want, every time you think of Candace, you think of Macron. Why? Because then you think, oh, she's being persecuted, she's being sued. It's laying the groundwork. Like, of course, that's absolutely what you do. So Candace and others, even the Tate brothers, like whatever, they moved to Russia and they operate out of Dubai. It doesn't just end there. It kicks off an ideological assault that's going on right now, but on a much bigger level. And what do I think Candace sees in her mind? I'll close with this. What moment really made Candace resentful towards Erica Kirk? Like what really did it? What moment was she jealous of? Charlie's memorial. Why? Because Erica, I think, handled a historical moment incredibly well. Like, it couldn't have been more important globally. Inspired people, just like Charlie did. Like, she fought back a wave of evil. There was a lot of bad things that could have happened. She fought it off by acting like a Christian and Christ-like. She forgave the assassin of her husband. And then things she talked about and how she did it, you knew it was genuine. And then she stood on the stage with the American flag and Trump. Now, there's a video of Candace when she's complaining about the aftermath of Charlie's death. Specifically, she goes, I thought it was going to be me and Trump and the FBI, and I'm going to find who killed my friend. She thought she was going to take up the mantle. Officially or unofficially, she'd be the face. I'm the one stepping in the shoes. I'm the one figuring out the killer. I'm the one with the FBI. I'm the one with Trump. What happened to the memorial? Erica Kirk, who she already was resentful for all the wrong reasons, is on there, does a fantastic job, which has to really burn. She's on there with Trump. Very similar to the scenario that Candace was saying she was so upset she didn't get to experience. Now look at what she's doing with Russia. Ideologically, and what she hopes will happen. I believe she envisions herself the closest thing to that now. I believe she's obsessed with being the anti-Erica Kirk. That her crusade against Erica Kirk is a microcosm of where she sees herself in the world. And it intersects with her ideology and everything else. That's why she's the opposite of everything. She doesn't forgive. It's not nice. Everything is opposite. It's like a bizarro situation. I think Candace's behavior, I'll put it this way, Candace's behavior indicates that a scenario where the world looks at the balance of power and sees the American flag and Trump or whoever the president is, and Israel, and Erica Kirk and Turning Point USA on one side. And on the other side is Candace, Tsarist Christianity, their allies, whoever else joins them, and Putin and the Russian flag. It's an almost biblical contrast, right? If you think about this. It's stunning when you think about it. If you look at Russia's influence operations, go back to 2018, which I believe were meant to influence, co-opt, potentially seize TPUSA. And they wanted to leverage Candace to do that, whether she knew it or not. If you read my article, you'll see it's very clear. That was the game plan. But if an influence campaign cannot take over a target, what does that influence campaign do? They destroy it. They damage it. They weaken it. Try to make it irrelevant. Look at how that story lines up. It's just astonishing. And so then you have that going on, and then you have Charlie, what happened to him. Then you have the memorial where you have one of the most powerful displays of positivity and strength and the example of Christ, in my opinion, that I've ever seen. And people are going to church. Wonderful, good things are happening. And the momentum was building and building. And it got diverted. It didn't get debunked, pushed back. But what did people start talking about? Why did those headlines go away? With how people were going back to church, reading the Bible, communicating with each other better. Why that stopped? Everyone started talking about Candace. Almost like the snake in the garden, almost like a biblical thing. This force of light was accelerating, and then there's always an equal but opposite force, and it was her. And her hatred, jealousy of Erica, and the war on Turning Point escalated. And now her identity is wrapped around two things. Number one, it's survival for her and her family. Okay. Financially and all that, but it's wrapped up with being the anti-Erica Kirk. And that's not just politically, it's religiously, it's in terms of behavior, how you deal with people, just everything is opposite. So if that's her driving impulse, then yes, all these other things I said mattered as rationales. That alone could lead someone like Candace Owen to go down the path that I believe she's preparing the option for. I believe all the indications are that's what she's looking to do. And by the way, before, it wasn't like I put all this together and said, oh my God, her only option is Russia and Dubai. I thought this a long time ago, way before the Russia trip was even announced. I didn't say it publicly because there weren't enough indications. There wasn't enough lining up for me to say there's so many anomalies pointing in that direction for me to feel confident in saying anything. But then she did the trip to Russia and she did a million things that can only be explained by exercising the option that I long believed is the only option for her. So that's what I had to release. I'm glad that I got through the whole podcast without throwing up. I hope you guys feel like it was impressive enough that it measured up to your expectations. I know that wasn't a 6. I didn't get to do it the way I wanted to. But more importantly, I think I hope it impacts how you view the world, the threats to the West, where things are going in the future. Because this is a story about American civil society and politics overall. It's not about Candace. It's not even about Candace versus Erica. That's just a microcosm, a representation of what's happening more broadly. And I've never had anybody say, I want to talk to you about the offensive by Russia's czarist Christianity. It's the number one ideological threat to Christianity today. The influence operations that I'm proud to have helped expose, because honestly, myself and my two colleagues, Eyepatchman and Restitutor on X, we destroyed that influence operation. That was going to be a big thing. Candace lying about that and showing up there and doing the tour. And the way these things work, our first impressions are everything. At that point, if you form the initial headlines and the narrative, most people don't go back to that. They don't revise it. You're just playing catch up at that point. We revealed the purpose and the meaning and fought back before Candace even left the United States. That entire media cycle is all negative. We didn't only counter it, we beat it. We made them pay a price. They ended up in the worst place. That's crazy. Almost never happens. But we had 1 week of negative coverage and people waking up to it. For example, Laura Loomer, I'm sure she would have come to the conclusion eventually anyway, but a 1 week focus on this based on civilian activism through people working with me and the Mauro Institute, which again, that is a little bit of a plug. If you want to support my work, ryanmauro.com, because I do want to continue doing this. But I don't have, I'm trying to be independent. I don't want to be a puppet of the tribes, of the political tribes, and get into that. But that's really the story here. It's the assault on civil society, the assault on Christianity, all this stuff that, you don't really know about. And this is what's coming around the corner broadly with Candace specifically. I can see the picture forming, and exposing influence ops like we did over a 1 week period. I mean, dominating X for a week, if you told me that would never happen in my life, I'd believe it. It was a turning point. You had Laura Loomer, again, who is smart enough, she would have realized what was going on her own. I'm not taking anything from her. By the way, she was the first one to report that something about Candace's trip having, like she said, it's not really family vacations. It involves this guy who's known as Russia's George Soros, involves Dugin. There's meetings going on. So my hat's off to her for her sources nailed that. And then we discovered what that was and the broader implications. But she has some very admirable posts on X where she said, look, I fell for Russian propaganda that swarmed the conservative movement, took advantage of our tribalism. Well, if the left says it, it must be garbage. And then the left says, oh, the right says it must be garbage. And then you never see the totality of the threat. That's why I define threat as the global seditionist movement. I won't go off on this. I'd love to talk to anyone if you want me to do a podcast about it, I'll do it. But I think that we view the conflict in our civil society, our political system, and globally in terms of security in completely the wrong way. That it's the way we look at things, the framing that we use is it's obsolete. And I think some people are waking up to that now because we smashed that Russian influence operation by discovering it, disclosing it, telling the truth about it, and drowning it throughout the entire week. It just, anytime it popped up, it was the top issue on X was always a negative headline about it. So these type of things can be beaten back you don't have to rely on the government. You don't have to outsource your responsibility. This is something you can do. It's something that you can support. Feel empowered. You're more empowered than ever. At every single crisis, every single situation where people hurt around the world, you can improve. Look at what I did in Afghanistan, for example, with volunteers. No skill set, no massive infrastructure, nothing. When we were helping the Christian Afghans get out. We just had time and phones. So let the past month, with all these revelations come forth, be an example to you and let it be an inspiration. And I hope, again, I hope this met your expectations, that you found it interesting. But more importantly, I hope that you're looking at things in civil society differently, in the credibility of our political discourse, in what the biggest threats to America's survival is, what the biggest threat to Christianity is. I hope it impacted all that. And by the way, if I continue doing podcasts, if it makes sense to do, if I'm able to do it, honestly, financially, take the time off from work and everything, it's not all going to be like this. It's not all going to be lectures. It's not it'll be more standard podcast stuff. So it won't be like this every time if you don't like this. I'll do it once in a while for the people that do when it's investigative stuff, but I'm not looking, if this isn't your style, it's not like a permanent thing. So if you didn't like it, give me another chance. All right. So thanks everyone for tuning in. Man, that's 2 hours. Whew. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. Follow me on social media. Make sure you follow me if you're on YouTube, subscribe to whatever. If you're not getting my updates, click the bell on those social media pages so that it gives you notifications whenever I post something. Because I don't show up to most people that follow me. It's not enough. It's not enough to follow someone anymore. They won't show up to you. You have to click the bell. And yeah, I'm interested in reading your feedback. I wasn't able to read it while I was going just now, but tonight and tomorrow I'll be looking to see what you guys had to say. And I hope it's positive because it's my first time ever trying to do this. All right. Have a good night, everybody.